Hey guys, OG Albina here, and I don't know about you guys, but I miss the good old days. I miss back in Gen 6, Gen 7 especially, back when Draft League had a usable timer, first and foremost. We had a full Nat Dex, and things just felt more fresh, more fun. There were more options to play with, and I don't know, maybe it's just the nostalgia of that's when I started playing in Generation 7, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the draft format at the very least, so I and a couple other friends really wanted to go back and relive that and get that nostalgia back and things like that. So we're going to be playing in Season 7 of the IBA, the International Battle Association, run by my buddy Brody, and me and Kurt and D-Ray and them all help run the league. It's a Generation 7 Wi-Fi league, and I'm really excited to bring you guys this season. We've uploaded Generation 7 Wi-Fi content on the channel plenty of times, even in Generation 8. So it's something that we've done well here, and a lot of people enjoyed, so I figured you guys would enjoy it one more time. If you guys do enjoy this draft analysis and are excited for the upcoming IBA season, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subs, and I would really appreciate it if you help me out along that journey and reaching that goal. And go ahead and drop in the comments below what your favorite Pokemon on our team that we drafted was. It's going to be a really, really cool squad. I'm pretty proud of it, and I think there's some cool mods that we haven't really seen much of recently in Generation 8 and 9. So, yeah, with that being said, we can kind of start off with, the first iteration of that in our Mega Pokemon. So, in Generation 7, we obviously can play with Megas, and we ended up allowing a lot of pretty, not typically seen things in Generation 7. Things like Mega Alakazam, Mega Latios, Aegislash, Landorus Incarnate. There's a few others that are typically banned in Gen 7. But I wanted to try a Pokemon that I haven't used in years, maybe, and I've only used it maybe once or twice, and it's absolutely insanely broken, and it really shouldn't have fallen to me at pick 3, but it did, so we'll take it. We ended up getting Mega Latias, ridiculously bulky Pokemon. I mean, insanely bulky Pokemon. This thing does not die to any one hit, really. Like, there's very few hits that are just going to kill a Mega Latias in one blow. Maybe opposing Draco Meteors and things like that from really strong dragons, but I'm sure we could even live some of them, and especially once we get a Calm Mind up, not many things are going to want to take us on. We get great utility moves like said Calm Mind, we get Roost and Recover, we get Defog, we get Thunder Wave, we could even rock out with some funny Reflect type stuff and some Refresh shenanigans, which was a move that was cut in Generation 8, but if you don't know, it's a move that gets rid of the status ailments on you. So it's a great status turn, making it to where we don't just auto lose to Toxic immediately if we're trying to set up Calm Minds. It's also really strong still. Base 140 special attack is nothing to scoff at. It's not a weak Pokemon in the slightest. So this is a Pokemon I think is very versatile and very easy to build a full team around. And I think we actually did a pretty good job this season. So we can kind of talk about it a little bit going forward. Okay, speaking of good synergy, we ended up drafting our Steel type, round 2, and that is going to be Heatran. Now, if you guys know me, and if you guys have been around the channel a lot, you know I love drafting Heatran. I absolutely love this Pokemon, whether it be its stall-breaking capabilities with Magma Swarm and Taunt and Earth Power and Protect and things like that. Its great rocking capabilities with, obviously, Stealth Rock. It's incredibly solid defensive typing that covers Latias very, very well, since it resists Ice and Fairy. And Lati covers Heatran very well, and being immune to the Ground-type moves that are coming its way, as well as resistant to Water and Fighting. So they really do pair incredibly together. But it's also incredibly strong offensively, and it's going to be one of our Z captains this season, alongside another Pokemon we'll talk about a little bit later on. But that means our Heatran can throw off Fire MZs, Grassy MZs, Groundy MZs, even like a random Rocky MZ for some random weird threat that's 4 times weak to Rock or something like that. Like, there's a lot of really cool options we can do with Heatran. We cannot rock out with like the Specs or Scarf Eruption sets easily, just because that set is Nature Locked to a quiet nature in this generation, but pretty much everything else that Heatran did in Generation 8 when we used it on the channel, it did in Gen 7, and it did very, very well. So I'm super excited to try Heatran here. It's a great pairing with Mega Latias. Now, after this, I wanted to kind of get that elite speed tier. A lot of the fast Pokemon were going, and I wanted a good offensive pairing to Lati and Heatran, and that is, of course, going to be Weavile. Weavile's in a really weird spot in Generation 7, in the sense it's not at its peak of its power, which was Generation 8, where it had access to Triple Axle, and it's not at the bottom of its power, which is Generation 9. And let me tell you, Generation 9 Weavile is very disappointing. Incredibly disappointing. Losing both Knockoff and Triple Axle. Weavile in Gen 7 is a little bit in that middle ground. Obviously, it doesn't have Axle because it's not a move yet, but it does still have access to Knockoff, and it has Pursuit, which I think is an incredible tool for a team that has threats like Latias and Heatran and things of the sort. Especially the Latias, being able to trap bulky Psychics or Ghost types locking into their Shadow Ball is going to be an incredible, incredible tool for our team to function and thrive going forward. Especially those ghosts, being able to pursuit trap those is going to be very, very nice for me. Now, obviously, it does add some 50-50s, but, you know, I feel pretty confident in my ability to, you know, at least put myself in a position where it's a little bit less of a 50-50, if that makes any sense. Like, knowing my opponent's optimal play, kind of what they have to do in order to keep themselves in the game, or even just being able to punish with a strong banded knockoff. I mean, there's not much in the game that switches into banded knock. Even if you resist it, you lose your item for it, which means you lose your leftovers, a resist berry, a scarf, a band, whatever it may be. That's gone, and that's incredibly crippling, which is amazing. So I really like Weavile on this team a lot. It's going to pair really well offensively with what we have so far, and especially that Mega Latias. It is going to love demolishing the things that switch into that guy. Now, next up, I wanted something, again, to kind of complement that Latias, that Heatran core, and there really wasn't much better on the board other than the Buzzwole. I mean, when we talk about it complementing Heatran, it's a great ground resist. When we talk about it complementing Latias, it bullies offensive dark types, which is also pretty incredible. It's also going to bully opposing steel types, which again is just an added benefit, and its stab is at least strong against psychics. Now, it doesn't necessarily switch in and beat them, but it's at least strong against them and can deal with them somewhat. It's a great physically defensive pivot and wall with Roost, but it's also very good offensively, whether that be with a Scarf, a Band, a Life Orb, or even just like a Leftovers / Rocky Helmet bulk up set. It has great coverage, and it's dual stab, which is very basically unresisted. It has coverage for fairies, which resist the dual stabs, and Iron Head and Poison Jab. It has the elemental punches. It has Edge Quake. It does a ton of things, and it does it really, really well. It's going to function as that great Fizz-Def wall, but also I think it's going to be a sleeper offensive pick. And I've always enjoyed Buzzwole, and I've used it in the past, and I think we'll enjoy it here. Next up, I elected to grab my second Z Captain in Manaphy. Now, Manaphy was probably at its peak of its power level in Generation 7. In Generation 8, even in Natdex leagues, Tailglow was kind of cut from the game, so it lost a really big piece of its arsenal in that generation. Plus, it really loves the Z moves that Generation 7 allows it to run. Now, whether that be in offensive like Waterium, Grassium, Fairyum, or like Icium Z set, or whether that be a Z Rain Dance set to set the rain to boost up its attacks, to give it a status immunity basically, hydration healing at the end of the turn, and giving it a +1 speed, makes it a bona fide terrifying sweeper, in conjunction with Tailglow or Calm Mind. Calm Mind Rest Rain Dance variants with Skull just burning things and chipping things down is really, really annoying for fatter teams to deal with, and I think that's going to be a set I end up running a lot. It's very bulky as well. It has good utility and moves like U-Turn and Knockoff and Scald to burn things, and I believe Heal Bell as well. Like, it can do a lot of great things for a team, outside of being that offensive win con, but the fact that it can do Tailglow, Calm Mind, or like Utility Mon, which it probably won't do much in Generation 7, but the fact that it can do those things makes it an incredibly valuable pick in my opinion. I've never been super big on Manaphy in the past, but I think it's just because I haven't really tried it at its peak level. I never used it in Gen 7, so I'm excited to try it here, and we'll kind of put it to the test and see if it ends up stacking up the way that we want it to. And yeah. Next up, I needed a ground type, and I need more rocks. So I end up grabbing Donphan. Not only does Donphan give us both of those two things, it also gives us a knockoff user, which we only have Weavile up to this point, which is nice. I love knocking the items off and, you know, chipping down my opponents gradually over time. But it also gives me Rapid Spin, and my only removal up to this point was actually Mega Latias, and I do not ever want to have to run Defog Mega Latias, because I think it's such a waste. So getting a good spinner right here was really important, and a great way of, you know, deterring hazards coming up on my own side of the field. It's a very strong Pokemon offensively, too. I think people really sleep on how strong offensively Donphan can be with his base 120 attack. It's great Fizz-Def-wise. Now, unfortunately, we don't get the spin buff this gen, where spin is stronger and makes us go faster. But again, we still have great other tools. Rock Boss is a super slept on third as well. And Sturdy is always a great ability. If hazards aren't up this generation, because we obviously can't boots it. But if hazards aren't up, we basically have a get out of jail free button, which is really cool. And yeah, overall, Donphan's a really strong Pokemon. It's a good low-tier ground type and spinner, and it really helps us kind of budget, because right now we are spending a lot of points really fast early on in the draft, so we kind of have to dial it down a little bit and kind of fill out some rolls and roll compress. Which, speaking of that, we actually end up roll compressing pretty heavy here in our next pick in Diancie. What Diancie gives us, and what we were kind of looking for in this pick, was it gives us a rocker, it gives us our fairy type, and it gives us a flying resist, which we only had Heatran up to this point, and Heatran's an HP ground away from kind of not being a factor, and it's not really a way I want to play Heatran, and switching into things constantly, and not being able to use its own offensive tool set and things like that. So I think Diancie is actually a great pickup for us, and giving us those resistances, giving us a dragon immunity, giving us a rocker, giving us another cleric and heal though, so we have you know, multiple clerical options, which is Very, very nice for a team like this with so many bulky threats. And yeah, it can also Trick Room up. Maybe we said Trick Room for Donphan or for Diancie. Trick Room Weakness Policy Diancie is great. Even Rock Polish Weakness Policy Diancie is great. And it's overall just a very solid Pokemon. It doesn't have Mystical Fire like it does in Generation 9, but it still has Earth Power and Hidden Power Fire. So it's really not that big of a nerf in my opinion. And it's going to be a very solid Pokemon overall. I'm really excited to use Diancie this season. Now, if you look at my team up to this point, there's one thing I really struggle with at this point, and that's going to be bulky water types. I don't particularly have ways of really bullying and beating them down outside of dedicating a Manaphy to them or dedicating a Mega Latias to them, which I don't really like. So I wanted something on my team that always beat bulky waters. And if you also look at my team has no T-Spike Absorber. So best of both worlds, we're going to grab both and really roll press right here and grab Roserade. I really think Roserade is an incredible pick on this team. It gives us spikes, which we did not have up to this point. T-Spikes, a T-Spike Absorber. And again, that Pokemon that just absolutely bullies bulky waters. Just absolutely demolishes them. Ice Beams are bouncing off of our high speed F stat. We force them out. We have Nat Cure, so we, Nat Cure off burns and things like that. And we can even go more offensive this gen. These are all things that Roserade did in Generation 8, but it wasn't really as good offensively because it didn't have access to Hidden Power, so it was really stuffed by Steel types. But now we can Technician, Hidden Power Ground, or Hidden Power Fire things, and really break through them. A lot of teams don't have a switch into a Life Orb Roserade, especially if we can throw off Hidden Power. So I think that Roserade is going to be very solid in this team, and he's going to be a great spiker as well. I really think our team appreciates spikes, and while Roserade is our only one, it's a very good spiker, and it can always find an opportunity to at least get up one every game. So I think this will be a Pokemon that comes very often for us. Another thing that we're very weak to right now, and really the last kind of hole defensively in this team, at least at first analysis of it, I could end up being like, wow, I need to fix some things. But at least at first analysis, something that really bugs me about this team is how weak to Ghost it was. Now, I have things to pressure Ghost offensively, in particular Weavile Pursuit trapping them, but I don't really have anything to switch into a Shadow Ball, right? Up to this point, it really is only the Weavile, which doesn't resist Ghost really. Like it does, but it doesn't, if you get what I mean. So I wanted a good normal type, and again, I wanted to kind of budget and save some points, and I need a little bit of momentum too. I think that's the biggest weak point of this team, is that it does not have a lot of momentum means and ways of getting in some of my big threats like Weavile and Latias and Heatran and things like that. So I wanted a Pokemon that can kind of get it in those big threats, and that's going to be Type Null. And Type Null is going to be a very solid pivot into Ghost types for us this generation. It's actually another Pokemon with Pursuit, while Silvally is much better in Generation 8, I think that Type Null is actually better in Generation 7. Since it has Pursuit, it also has Return for more reliable normal stab to do a lot more damage, which is awesome. We can still Swords Dance up, we can Rest Talk all over teams, and just be an overall huge nuisance for our opponents to deal with. I definitely think this Pokemon is pretty incredible. We have to be careful around knockoffs and things like that. It's also a Pokemon that's going to force in offensive fightings a lot, which we can get that U-turn out into our Latias or Manaphy or Buzzwole. And things like that, and really put some pressure on it. Even our Diancie, get our Roserade, get up some hazards, get some spikes, stall off a big hit, whatever it may be. Type Null is going to be a great facilitator of the rest of our offense and be a great pivot into those offensive ghosts and deal with them accordingly. Then lastly, I really couldn't find anything I needed, and I wanted some more immediate offense. I wanted something that struck fear into the heart of my opponents, and nothing will do so like Schnappy the Feraligatr. This is a Pokemon that wasn't in Generation 7, it's not in Generation 8 right now. I have not used it more than once in like a low tier showdown league like 3 years ago, and I really want to give him a shot. Every time I want to draft him, he just doesn't fit because he doesn't particularly fill many roles very well. But for this team, I really didn't feel like I needed much more, so I felt like Feraligatr was a perfect go right here. It's a Life Orb, Sheer Force boosted monster, whether it be with Dragon Dance to clean through teams, Swords Dance to potentially clean through teams with Aqua Jet, but as well as be just a wall breaker in its purest form. Liquidation, Ice Punch, Earthquake, Crunch, Aqua Jet for priority, even just like Double Edges or something like that. We can also go mix with Ice Beam. Agility Gator is a very viable option as well to double up our speed if we just naturally break through everything. Gator is an incredibly strong Pokemon, and I'm very excited to use it this season. I think if we can facilitate some setups with Gator, I'll be one happy guy. But yeah, that is going to be our team this season. Let me know what you think of the IBA squad. Again, drop in the comments which Pokemon you're most excited to see us use, which of the Pokemon we drafted are your favorite, and let me know what you thought of this more edited, draft analysis. I thought it would be a pretty interesting idea to have a more visually stimulating draft analysis opposed to typical just showdown builder, here's the team and go. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.